So I went to Harvard Law School, and all the students there, they wanted to work, with a few exceptions, in corporate law firms. And of course, the law school obliged. Those were where the lucrative jobs were. So we had the curriculum geared to corporate law. So there was no consumer law course. There was no poverty law course. There was a law on landlord-tenant, and we never got to the tenant. And the Harvard Law School's graduates are going to represent tenants. They're going to represent landlords. That's where the money is. We had a course on criminal law, and it didn't touch corporate crime. Even though corporate crime is pretty widespread, not as much as now, where we're in a corporate crime wave. So we should ask ourselves, what does it mean to grow up corporate? It means to constrain our very imagination. It means that we are not offered the full panorama that can provoke a critical mind, that can develop innovations in thinking that would raise the expectation level of the people. It would raise the imagination level of the people so that we can connect our promise to performance on the ground. And we have far more problems than we deserve in this country, but far more solutions that we don't apply. They're on the shelf. Housing, energy, public transit, tax reform, you name it. We've got it. And some of them are actually pilot projects around the country. The inner city school that's really humming along beautifully. Or the building that uses 25% of the energy of a similar building down the street of the same size. So this is what really consumer exercises tend to provoke and explore. And I want to illustrate just how we grow up corporate. How many of you have signed a fine print contract in your life? I see. So it's everybody virtually, right? You open a bank account, see the little card with this fine print, you sign, they give you a bank account. Credit card application, sure. Auto insurance policy, landlord lease, and so on. Well, a contract's supposed to be a meeting of the minds. The freedom of contract's one of the pillars of our democracy. And yet we've lost that freedom because those fine print contracts are written obviously by the vendors, by the sellers. And those sellers like to write them to their advantage. They're not looking out for us, the consumers. So they have penalties and overcharges and gouging interest rates and mandatory arbitration to keep you from going to court, and all kinds of ways that, in effect, keep you from meeting their mind in a more equitable fashion. And of course, the companies don't compete about those contracts. All states contract and State Farm is pretty much the same. GM, Ford, pretty much the same. Bank of America, Citigroup, pretty much the same. So you can't say, well, I'm not going to go. This contract's too onerous. I'm going to go to the competitor. It's the same. They don't compete over it. Now, suppose you wanted to buy a car. You went down to buy a used car, and the dealer checked you out, the salesperson, and put the papers down for you to sign. And you said to the clerk, do you have a chair? And the clerk says, aren't you feeling well? No, I just want to read the contract. My mommy and daddy told me never to sign anything without reading it. And so the clerk thinks this is rather bizarre. So he gets you a chair, you sit down, you get your magnifying glass out, and you start reading it. Okay? And there are things you don't like. So you cross out a paragraph here, double the warranty there, get rid of the mandatory arbitration, and you put your initial, as they teach you in business courses. And you bring it back to the clerk and say, here, I think I got it right where I want it. Sign on the dotted line. What do you think would happen? Want me to tell you what happened? We put out a book years ago called an action manual for lemon owners. You know, you buy a lemon, what do? And at the end of the book, we had a simple pro-consumer contract in large print. So we said to the readers, if you go buy a car, slap the contract down and ask the dealer to sign your contract, your purchase contract, and let us know what happened. The first letter we get back, this person goes down gets his GTO Pontiac, gets everything all right, slaps down the contract. The clerk looks up like this, rushes to the glass cage where the manager is, and the manager calls the police. The second one, the person was chased out of the dealer room with the guy saying, "Get out of here, you dirty communist." This is back in the 60s. And what were they doing? All they were trying to do is have a consensual, contractual agreement that wasn't one-sided. But you see, if we grow up corporate, we don't even think of it. It's totally bizarre. Have you ever had a bull session? Do they still use words like that here? Huh? You know what a bull session is? Oh, well, you know when you talk about serious things informally among yourself? Okay. Outside of school. You ever had a talk among each other about what you own? And think of making a list of everything you own. You go to savings account and motorcycle and car and clothes and books and iPods and all the rest of it. You keep going and you're down to paper clips and you say, there's nothing else. What do you mean there's nothing else? We own the greatest wealth in the country. It's called the public lands, a third of America, and offshore. We own the public airways. We own trillions of dollars of government research and development from DOD, NASA, National Institutes of Health, discovering, developing drugs. We don't control any of it. We own, but we don't control. The corporations control. They get our gold, our silver, our molybdenum free under the 1872 Mining Act. A Canadian gold company discovered gold on our land in Nevada a few years ago and went to the U.S. Department of Interior, and under the 1870 Mining Act, the 72 Mining Act, all they had to do was prove the gold. Turned out to be worth $9 billion, and the government had to give them ownership of the gold for the acreage above the land, which was sold for $5 an acre. So for 30,000 bucks, they got $9 billion of our gold. No royalties back to the government. Did you learn anything about that in school? That's not a modest item. So we have this enormous wealth that we own legally. It's called the Commonwealth, but we don't control it. So growing up corporate means that the corporate commercial values control our very knowledge base. They control our imagination. For instance, there are 16 million college students, undergraduate, graduate, and community college in this country, double the size of Sweden. You don't have a single radio station or TV station other than college, university, radio and TV station. You don't have that at all. And as a result, you don't have a communication system other than more recently the internet, of course, but it's not quite the same. It's very fractured. And you don't think in terms of a constituency that can begin to have a political and economic effect on the country, not to mention the technological effect here and abroad. You know what the students did in the 60s. I mean, it was just a small number of them, relatively, but they had the passive morale support of millions of other students. Well, look at the anti-war movements, the civil rights movements. It was the students of America that put the environmental movement on the map in 1970 with the April Earth Day. That was the first Earth Day. That made the late evening television news. The evening television news, the cover of Time, Newsweek, was a big deal in those days. And the students did that. And it's up to you to carry on that legacy. You're standing on their shoulders, and you can learn from what they did and take it to the next level. But just to get back to the public airways, for instance, notice the lack of imagination. And we never talked about it either when I was at school. Did we ever talk about having our own student network? Our own student television network? Our own student radio network?